Every year on March 15th, Alex Martinez performed the same ritual. He would lock himself in his room, pull out an old cassette player, and listen to the voice of his best friend Tim, the friend who had died of cancer 25 years ago. What Alex didn't know was that 500 miles away, Tim was performing his own ritual, sitting by his phone, wanting to call Alex but believing his friend had moved on and forgotten him. For 25 years, two best friends had been grieving each other while both were still alive, and what Ellen was about to reveal would prove that some connections are too strong for even death, or in this case, medical mistakes, to break. The studio was electric with emotion as Ellen finished her opening dance to "You've Got a Friend," the song choice seeming almost mystical given what was about to unfold. The audience was still wiping away tears from Ellen's monologue about the importance of friendship, and the warm California afternoon light streaming through the windows promised that this would be one of those episodes that redefined what people believed was possible. Alex Martinez sat in the green room, nervously clutching a worn leather box that contained his most precious possessions, cassette tapes, old photographs, and letters that had never been sent. At 43, Alex had the kind of weathered strength that came from years of carrying both purpose and pain, deep brown eyes that held equal measures of sadness and determination, graying hair that he kept short and neat, and the steady presence of someone who had built his life around honoring someone else's memory. Alex had never imagined he would be sitting backstage at the Ellen DeGeneres show. 6 weeks earlier, a producer had called the Tim Rodriguez Foundation, the charity Alex had founded in his best friend's memory, asking if Alex would share his story on the show's Friends Forever segment. Alex had been hesitant at first, protective of the private grief that had fueled his life's work for over 2 decades, but something about the producer's enthusiasm had convinced him that Tim's story deserved to be told. What Alex didn't know was that his appearance had been orchestrated by something far more complex than a simple charity feature. 3 months earlier, the show's research team had been investigating medical record discrepancies when they stumbled upon one of the most extraordinary cases of mistaken identity they had ever encountered, a case that would reunite two friends who had spent 25 years believing the other was gone forever. "Alex Martinez, you're ready in 5 minutes," a production assistant announced. Alex took a deep breath, touched the small silver bracelet he wore with Tim's initials engraved on it, and followed the assistant toward the stage. As he walked through the corridors lined with photos of Ellen's most memorable reunions, he thought about the phone call he made to Tim's old number every year on his birthday, knowing it would never be answered, but needing to speak the words anyway. Ellen's introduction was warm and respectful. "My next guest has spent 25 years turning his grief into something beautiful. After losing his best friend to cancer, he founded a charity that has helped thousands of families facing similar battles. His story is a testament to the power of friendship and the ways love continues even after loss. Please welcome Alex Martinez." The audience applauded as Alex walked onto the stage, his nervous energy evident, but his dignity intact. Ellen greeted him with her signature hug and immediately sensed the deep well of both sorrow and purpose radiating from this man. "Alex, thank you for being here," Ellen said as they settled onto the familiar white couch. "Tell me about the Tim Rodriguez Foundation and what inspired you to start it." Alex's face softened as he began talking about his life's work. "Tim was my best friend from childhood. We grew up together in Phoenix, did everything together, played baseball, went to the same college, were each other's best men at our weddings. When he was diagnosed with cancer at 25, I was devastated. But Tim was so brave. Even when the doctor said there was no hope, he kept fighting." Ellen leaned forward with compassion. "That must have been incredibly difficult to watch." "It was," Alex said quietly. "But Tim made me promise something before he died. He said, 'Alex, don't let my death be meaningless. Help other families who are going through this.' So after his funeral, I started the foundation. We provide financial support for families dealing with cancer, fund research, and offer emotional support groups. Ellen could see the pain that still lived behind Alex's composed exterior. How do you keep Tim's memory alive in your daily life? Alex reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small cassette player that looked like it had seen decades of use. Tim recorded messages for me near the end. Funny stories, advice, memories of our friendship. Every year on the anniversary of his death, I listen to them. It helps me feel close to him. The studio had grown noticeably quieter as the audience sensed the depth of Alex's devotion to his lost friend. Can you share what kind of things Tim said in those recordings? Ellen asked gently. Alex's eyes filled with tears as he pressed play on the cassette player. Tim's voice, young and vibrant despite his illness, filled the studio. Hey, Alex, if you're listening to this, it means I'm gone, but I want you to know that our friendship was the best part of my life. Don't spend too many years being sad about me, okay? Find joy, help people, and remember that I'll always be your friend no matter what. The audience was openly crying now, moved by the love and strength in Tim's voice. Ellen was struggling to maintain her composure. Alex, that's beautiful. Tim sounds like he was an incredible person. He was, Alex said simply. He was my brother in every way that mattered. Losing him changed everything about my life, but his memory has given my life purpose. Ellen exchanged a meaningful look with her producers in the booth. What happened next would either be the most miraculous moment in television history or would require the most delicate handling imaginable. Alex, Ellen said carefully, what if I told you that there's been a terrible mistake? Alex looked confused. What kind of mistake? What if I told you that 25 years ago there was a mix-up at the hospital and the person you've been grieving all these years is actually alive? Alex's face went completely white. That's impossible. I was at his funeral. I spoke at his service. Ellen's voice was gentle but firm. Alex, we've been investigating your story for months. There was a patient mix-up at Phoenix General Hospital in 1999. The person who died was another patient with a similar name. Tim Rodriguez survived his cancer treatment. Alex's hands were shaking as he set down the cassette player. You're saying Tim is alive? I'm saying Tim Rodriguez is very much alive, and he's been wondering for 25 years why his best friend never called him after he recovered. The audience gasped audibly as the implications of Ellen's words sank in. But I got the call from the hospital, Alex said, his voice breaking. They said he was gone. There was a miscommunication involving two patients with similar names, Ellen explained gently. By the time the mistake was realized, you had already left town, and Tim was too hurt and confused to pursue it. He thought you had abandoned him during his recovery. Alex was staring at Ellen as if she were speaking a foreign language. You're telling me that for 25 years I've been mourning someone who's alive? Ellen stood up and looked toward the stage entrance. Tim Rodriguez, would you like to come out here? The studio erupted as a man in his 40s walked onto the stage. Tim Rodriguez looked remarkably similar to Alex, the same build, the same kind eyes, but with the healthy glow of someone who had beaten cancer and lived to tell about it. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans, and his face showed the same mixture of disbelief and overwhelming emotion that Alex was experiencing. Alex stood up so quickly he nearly fell over. Tim? Tim? Is that really you? Alex, Tim said, his voice thick with emotion. I can't believe it's really you. The two men stared at each other across the stage, 25 years of grief and confusion and missed opportunities hanging in the air between them. You're alive, Alex whispered. You're actually alive. I've been alive, Tim said, tears streaming down his face. I've been wondering why you disappeared. I thought you couldn't handle being around someone who reminded you of mortality. I thought I had lost my best friend because I got sick. Ellen watched as the two friends slowly moved toward each other, their disbelief giving way to recognition, and then to overwhelming joy. "I thought you were dead," Alex said. "I've spent 25 years thinking you were dead." "I've spent 25 years thinking you hated me," Tim replied. They met in the middle of the stage and embraced with the desperate intensity of two people who had been given back something they thought was lost forever. Ellen was openly sobbing, along with most of the audience. "This is incredible. Tim, can you tell us what happened from your perspective?" Tim pulled back from Alex but kept his hands on his friend's shoulders as if afraid he might disappear again. "I was in the hospital for months. The treatment was brutal, but I survived. When I was finally released, I expected Alex to be there, but the nurses said my family had been notified of my recovery. When weeks went by and I didn't hear from him, I figured he had moved on with his life." Alex was staring at Tim in amazement. "I got a call saying you had died. I flew back to Phoenix for what I thought was your funeral. There was a service, people speaking about someone's life. I never thought to question it." Ellen shook her head in wonder. "The hospital mixed up two patients. Alex attended the funeral of someone else named Tim Rodriguez." "All these years," Alex said, his voice breaking, "all these years I've been talking to your grave, and you were alive." "All these years I've been wondering what I did wrong," Tim replied. "I thought our friendship meant more to you than my illness." Ellen reached for tissues and handed them to both men. "The most important question is, how do you both feel right now?" Alex and Tim looked at each other, then started laughing through their tears, the kind of laughter that comes from relief, so profound it borders on hysteria. "I feel like I've been given my life back," Alex said, "but I also feel like an idiot for never investigating further." "I feel like the luckiest man alive," Tim said. "Not just because I survived cancer, but because I get my best friend back." Ellen had more surprises in store. "Alex, Tim, I have something to show you both." The large screen behind them lit up with footage that the show's researchers had compiled. Alex at charity events over the years, always mentioning Tim in his speeches, newspaper articles about the foundation's work, and then, surprisingly, footage of Tim at some of those same charity events, standing in the back of the crowd, watching Alex speak. "Tim," Ellen said, "you've been following Alex's work?" Tim nodded, wiping his eyes. "For the past 10 years, once I learned about the foundation online, I was too scared to approach him directly, but I was so proud of what he was doing in my name. I just wished he knew I was grateful." Alex turned to stare at Tim. "You were there? At my events?" "At least a dozen of them," Tim admitted. "I wanted to say something, but I thought you had deliberately cut me out of your life. I didn't want to cause you pain by showing up." Ellen was amazed by the layers of this story. "So, for years you've both been in the same room, grieving the loss of each other while standing feet apart?" The audience was completely captivated by this impossible reunion. "There's more," Ellen continued. "Tim, what have you been doing with your life?" Tim's face lit up. "I became a counselor, specifically working with cancer survivors and their families. I wanted to help people process the trauma and confusion that comes with serious illness." Alex's mouth fell open. "You've been doing the same work I have, just from a different angle." "We've been parallel lives," Tim said with wonder. "Both of us trying to make meaning from what we thought was a tragedy." Ellen reached into her desk and pulled out a folder. "I have one more surprise for both of you. The producers have been in contact with Phoenix General Hospital. They want to issue a formal apology for the mix-up that cost you 25 years of friendship, and they're also proposing something incredible." Alex and Tim looked at Ellen expectantly. "They want to fund a joint program between the Tim Rodriguez Foundation and Tim's counseling practice. A comprehensive support system for cancer patients and their families that combines financial assistance, medical advocacy, and emotional counseling." The two friends looked at each other, then back at Ellen. "You're asking us to work together?" Alex asked. "I'm asking if you want to turn 25 years of separation into a lifetime of collaboration," Ellen replied. Tim reached for Alex's hand. "Alex, I can't think of anything I'd rather do than spend the rest of my life working alongside my best friend." "Yes," Alex said immediately. "Absolutely yes." Ellen wasn't finished. "There's one more thing. Tim, I understand you never got married because you felt like you couldn't move forward while this uncertainty hung over your life." Tim nodded. "I felt like I was in limbo. How could I build a future when I didn't understand my past? And Alex, your wife told us that you've struggled with survivor's guilt for 25 years, always wondering if you could have done more to save Tim." Alex looked down at his hands. "It's been hard on my family. I've been grieving someone who wasn't dead instead of fully living with the people who are alive." Ellen smiled. "Well, today marks a new beginning for both of you. No more guilt, no more wondering, no more grief over something that never happened." 6 months later, Ellen attended the grand opening of the Martinez Rodriguez Center for Cancer Support, a comprehensive facility that provided everything from financial assistance to medical advocacy to emotional counseling. Alex and Tim had worked side by side to create something neither could have built alone. The center's waiting room featured a display case with the old cassette player Alex had treasured for 25 years, along with a plaque that read, "Sometimes the most powerful connections survive even the greatest misunderstandings." Tim had also found love, marrying a fellow counselor who understood his journey and embraced his friendship with Alex. Alex's marriage had been renewed by the lifting of the grief that had shadowed it for decades. Ellen visited the center on its first anniversary and found Alex and Tim in their shared office, planning new programs and laughing like the young men they had once been. "Any regrets about the lost years?" Ellen asked. Alex and Tim looked at each other and smiled. "The years weren't lost," Tim said. "We were both becoming the people we needed to be to do this work together." "Besides," Alex added, "we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. Because sometimes the most impossible stories are the most true. Sometimes medical mistakes become miracles in disguise. And sometimes the best friendships are the ones strong enough to survive even death, especially when death turns out to be the biggest misunderstanding of all."